Hey everyone, Gideon here, and today what we're going to talk about is human nature is not fallen nature. So I've witnessed in my life people acting in selfish ways or acting like animals or acting by their instinct, and people would say, well, that's human nature for you. We just have it inside us to just act like animals because guess what? We are animals. Dog eat dog. We had to act in these heinous behaviors. And I would disagree. I would call that fallen nature, and here's why. So it is understandable that humans do have an instinctual behavior. They do have an animalistic behavior, but they themselves are not exactly animals. We are beyond animals. Yes, there is something within our brains, such as the limbic system, that does deal with instinctual acts as, fight or flight, right? We do have things like that. But guess what? We can actually control that. We could actually dominate that. We don't have to be dominated by the limbic system, right? We have this frontal cortex of logic and reason and planning things out. This is something that animals don't exactly have. Why? Well, guess what? We have been granted by God to have such a mind like that. And at its full capacity, if we can understand the real value of what we have as human beings in our original nature, our cup is already full, where God has already granted us this dignity ever since we were born. He already gave us this worth ever since we were born, that we are his child, and we also have the power to rule over creation. And we don't need to exactly work to get that worth. We're already granted with that, right? So this is different from angels. Now, angels, in a way, they are like animals. They are like creatures. They are, in a way, running by instinct. Now, they are more sentient beings, and they're very smart, and they can communicate with us, but they don't have the right to rule, you could say. And also, with fallen nature, this is coming from fallen angels. So let me break this down for you. A good angel is someone that is a good servant to human beings, no matter what level of maturity or heart a human being is. A fallen angel is someone that has no respect or dignity for a human being. And no matter how mature the human being is, they just want to crush them. And this dates back all the way from the Garden of Eden between Lucifer and Adam and Eve. Now, with fallen nature, let me break this down for you, okay? Number one, fallen nature is not seen from God's point of view. It's not seen from the original intent of what God created that thing or that person to be. So, just like Lucifer, he didn't see from God's point of view of the value of Adam and Eve. He again saw from a workspace value that these creatures, they don't work as hard as him. So he developed this ego about himself of what he's capable of doing or how smart he is. Okay, so naturally that develops a certain type of jealousy, right? And then naturally with the second part of fallen nature is leaving one's proper position. So as someone who's supposed to be a good servant then turns into a bad servant, or a matter of fact, tries to become the master, you could say. So he left his proper position as a servant and acted outside of God's principle, acted outside of what God instilled him to be, and went out as, you could say, like a cancer or a virus that could just go against the human body system, right? Then number 3 is reversing dominion. So just like what Lucifer did, he acted as the master over Adam and Eve. Originally he was a servant. Adam and Eve were supposed to be the masters, but then in their give and take, he then reversed positions in where he gets to dominate them. So he becomes a master, and Adam and Eve, they become the servants. Then lastly, the fourth part of fallen nature is multiplying evil. So Finally, when Adam and Eve were dominated by Lucifer, what's the multiplication from there? They multiplied children who are now part of an evil lineage of Lucifer. They are inheriting original sin. Doesn't mean that they consciously worship Satan. Now, there has been cultures from that, you could say like the Canaanites or the Egyptians, who in a way actually worship Satan or Lucifer. But, there's some people who have original sin. They consciously aren't believing in that. But also with fallen nature, it doesn't have to be just a relationship between you and someone else that you're not seeing from God's point of view towards that person, and you leave your proper position as how God originally intended you to be. You then dominate that person unrighteously so, and then you multiply evil from there. Matter of fact, you could do it to yourself. You could, in a way, do a self-worship on yourself. You see yourself as maybe a god, or maybe you see yourself not based on how God originally intended you to be. You then leave your own proper position of yourself, and in an interesting way, you get to dominate yourself in a bad way. Actually, you're making yourself under the position of what God already intended you to be, and then you're kind of multiplying evil from there based on your self-worship, where you're not actually receiving the true essence of God to have a give and take with him, because you're just self-worshiping yourself. You're a limited human being. But guess what? That's what the fallen angels did to themselves. They in a way, Lucifer self-worshipped himself, right? He was the first self-worshipper. And then it got to Eve, and then to Adam, and then so forth. Another way of self-worship is actually not seeing yourself so worthy based on works. So it could be like, oh, I'm just a good for nothing. Oh, what am I worth to the world? Oh, I don't do anything. I'm too short, or I'm too fat, or I'm too ugly, or I'm not so smart enough. And you just like hang yourself down in some corner of a room. Right? That, in a way, is kind of like self-worship. Actually, you're committing yourself fallen nature because you're not seeing yourself from God's point of view. So what we see in our world of how it's expressed with our fallen nature is, let's say that there's someone that has a business that's really successful and your business is not being successful, or someone's dressed really pretty and you're not dressed really pretty, or someone's really fit and you're not really fit. And you look at that person and you just say to yourself, well, what would be a better way to approach it is, wow, you know what? Good for that person. I need to motivate myself to get better, right? But that doesn't tear your soul down. But a bad way of expressing fallen nature is when you look at those things and you say, ugh, that person has that. Well, you know what? I'm going to go after them and destroy them. That way, I'm the one who has the best competition. I'm the one who looks the prettiest. I'm the one who looks the most fittest, even though I have a lot of ripples in my belly. I mean, it just... Sometimes there's really freaky stuff like that. I think I remember like in some competition back in the 80s where there were these like two ice skating women and ice skate dancers or whatever, and one woman literally used her ice skates and smashed the other woman's ankles to destroy them so she could be number one in her competition of ice skating, dancing, or whatever. I mean, that's like an expression of fallen nature, of not seeing from the original intent of God's point of view and leaving your proper position, reversing dominion, dominating your opponent, and in a horrible way, in violating way. And yeah, you're kind of multiplying evil from there. You're developing really bad emotions with each other. Anyway, so that's definitely, there's lots and lots of expressions of fallen nature that we've seen in our society. So fallen nature, again, it comes from angels. It comes from fallen angels based on work salvation, based on not seeing from God's original intent. So from there, that's why we have a society where people act in ways that's not from their original nature, not from their original human nature. They're actually acting from a fallen nature that comes from a race that's not their race. It's not from a human race. It's from an angel's race. We're actually coming from creatures who aren't at the same level as us, you could say. They're in a way coming from spiritual AI, right? Why would they be spiritual AI? Because again, they're with AI, right? If we were to have AIs, which we do here in I'm sure in the United States and some parts of the world, I think China has some AI. You would expect their value is just based on worth, not in some original intent of their nature that you would relate to them as a son or a daughter. And that's kind of creepy if you would to have a relationship with an AI as if they're your son and your daughter, right? It really is based on their worth, what they can do. So angels are like that. They're kind of like spiritual AI. But the ones who are kind of having like a virus, you could say, quote unquote, having fallen nature, well, that is now being instilled in human beings, and human beings thus are acting as such. And again, angels, they're kind of like animals, right? They kind of have this instinct, you could say. But again, now this is like a fallen instinct. It's based on that instinct. So human beings are originally inheriting that, and this is something where when Jesus came in and tried to help humanity understand their original value is to connect with Christ, connect with the original man, and thus connecting with God, well, then our cups will already be filled, and that fallen nature will be eradicated from us. That our fallen nature that's coming from fallen angels can be eradicated. We could totally be human. So I hope you guys learn a lot, and I wish you an awesome day. Peace out. Mwah.